rope creaked softly in the Kansas wind, not enough to drown out the sound of the whip. The crack echoed across Dry Creek Ranch like a rifle shot. The woman hanging beneath the old cottonwood tree flinched, but she did not scream. That seemed to anger the men even more. Another lash, another stripe across her worn dress, another splash of blood darkening the dust below her boots. The summer of 1883 had baked the prairie into hard earth and yellow grass. Heat shimmered above the fields. A few townsfolk stood beyond the fence line pretending not to watch. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Fear was a language everyone understood on the frontier. Sign the deed. One of the men barked. The widow raised her head. Her gray hair hung across her face. One eye was swollen nearly shut. No. The answer came out weak. But it came. The leader spat into the dirt. You'd rather die for this patch of land? The widow glanced toward the house, toward the weathered porch, toward the empty chair that had sat untouched for 15 years. Then she looked back at him. My husband is buried here. A smile twisted across the man's face. Then we'll bury you beside him. The whip rose again. A gunshot cracked across the prairie. The leather strap exploded in midair. For one long second, nobody moved. Then a voice rolled down from the distant ridge. Cold, calm, certain. That whip touches her again. The rider thumbed back the hammer on his revolver. You lose the hand. The four men turned, and for the first time that afternoon, they looked afraid. Nobody breathed. The broken half of the whip dropped into the dust. The four men turned toward the distant ridge. A lone rider stood against the sun. Horse still, hat low, face hidden. Another gunshot rang out. A revolver exploded from one outlaw's hand. The crowd scattered. The horseman began riding toward the ranch. Slowly, deliberately, like a man with nowhere else to be. The widow stared at the approaching figure. Her battered hands tightened around a small wooden box hidden beneath her torn dress. 15 years, 15 long years, and somehow she knew. Even before the rider reached the gate, even before she could see his face, her son had finally come home.
Will those four men survive? What happens next?
The four men were gone before sunset. Two rode away bleeding. The other two left their guns behind and chose not to argue with fate. The prairie grew quiet again. Just wind, just dust, just the old ranch, standing where it had stood for nearly 30 years. Inside the farmhouse, lantern light flickered across rough wooden walls. The widow sat at the kitchen table while a wet cloth rested against her bruised cheek. Across from her sat the son who had vanished 15 years ago. He had not changed in the way most men changed. His face carried more scars now. His eyes carried more distance, but the silence was the same, the kind that settled around him like a second coat. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then the woman poured coffee into a tin cup and slid it across the table. You still drink it black. It was not a question. The drifter nodded. The corners of her mouth almost smiled. Almost. You always did. Outside, wind rattled the porch boards. Inside, memory sat between them. 15 years earlier, another chair had stood at this same table. A younger girl had laughed there. A girl with bright eyes and a stubborn streak twice her size. Then, one day, she disappeared along Fort Hayes Road. Sometimes the drifter still remembered her laugh. A summer evening, cornbread cooling on the table. His little sisters stealing the last piece and running for the door. Their mother pretending to be angry. Their father trying not to smile. Funny thing about grief. Years pass. Faces fade. But small moments stay. Like footprints in wet earth. Gone without warning. Gone without answers. The drifter had spent half his life chasing those answers. Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico territory, mining camps, rail depots, frontier towns where nobody remembered names, only faces, only rumors. Yet every trail ended the same way. Dust, silence, nothing. The widow slowly reached beneath the table. She pulled out a small wooden box. The same box she had protected beneath her dress while hanging from the cottonwood tree. She placed it carefully between them. I suppose it's time. The drifter stared at it. His jaw tightened. His mother opened the lid. Inside rested three objects: a faded photograph, an unopened letter, and a yellowed transportation receipt. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the drifter picked up the receipt. The paper felt brittle with age. His eyes stopped on a name stamped near the bottom. Gilded Lily. He had never heard it before, but something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. His mother reached for the letter. A young woman brought these here 6 days ago. The drifter looked up. What young woman? A girl named Maggie Holt. The room fell silent. The widow swallowed. She said men were following her. The drifter's expression darkened. And where is she now? The widow stared into the lantern flame, then slowly shook her head. I don't know. Another gust rattled the windows. Then she revealed the thing she had not told anyone. The thing that had kept her awake every night since Maggie arrived. Before she left, the widow's voice trembled. She claimed she had seen your sister's name in a ledger. The drifter froze. For 15 years, every rumor had led nowhere. Every clue had died. Every witness had vanished. But this felt different. Because for the first time in a very long time, hope had walked through his front door. And now it was missing too. Somewhere beyond the darkness of the prairie, Maggie Holt had disappeared. And she might be carrying the only trail leading to the girl stolen from Fort Hayes Road. The trail began at sunrise. The drifter left Dry Creek Ranch before the morning heat settled over the prairie. His mother stood on the porch and watched him ride away. Neither said goodbye. People who had spent years losing things learned not to trust goodbyes. The only clue Maggie had left behind was a stable receipt from a freight depot nearly 20 miles east. It wasn't much, but the drifter had followed weaker trails before. The road wound through fields of tall grass and abandoned homesteads. Dust followed his horse like a shadow. Near noon he found the first sign. Fresh wagon tracks, 3 horses, heavy loads, moving east. Not ranchers, not merchants, men in a hurry. The drifter gunman dismounted beside a dry creek bed. There, tangled beneath a thorn bush, he found a piece of blue fabric. Women's clothing, recently torn. His eyes narrowed. Maggie. The trail continued another 6 miles before reaching an abandoned rail station. The building sat alone beneath the burning Kansas sky. Boarded windows, collapsed roof, silent tracks, stretching toward the horizon. Too silent. The drifter tied off his horse and approached on foot. A sound drifted from inside. A muffled cry. Then another. He moved instantly, one hand on his revolver, the other pushing open the warped wooden door. Inside, darkness swallowed most of the room, but he saw enough. 3 men. One frightened young woman tied to a chair, and a lantern hanging above them. The men turned. Too late. The first gunshot shattered the lantern. Glass exploded. Darkness rushed into the room. The second shot hit a pistol before it cleared a holster. The third convinced the last man to dive for cover. Less than 20 seconds later, the room fell quiet. The drifter stood alone among drifting smoke. The young woman stared at him, terrified, exhausted, alive. Maggie Holt? She nodded. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he cut the ropes binding her wrists. The skin beneath them was raw. They said you'd come, she whispered. You took your time. The drifter frowned. What? Maggie looked away. Girls have been disappearing for years. Silence. You spent 15 years looking for one. The words landed harder than a bullet. The drifter's jaw tightened. My sister is why I'm here. Maggie nodded. That's what I'm afraid of. Neither spoke after that. The drifter frowned. Who did? Maggie's eyes filled with something deeper than fear. Memory. Fine. Other girls. A long silence followed. Outside, wind pushed against the station walls. Finally, Maggie reached beneath her torn coat. She removed several folded pages. Ledger pages. Old. Worn. Stolen. The drifter unfolded them carefully. Rows of names. Dates. Destination. Train route. Most looked meaningless. Until one line caught his eye. His breathing stopped. A girl's name. A name he had not seen in 15 years. His sister's. Not listed among the dead. Not listed among the missing. Listed among the transferred. The date beside the entry was far newer than it should have been. Far newer. Maggie watched the color drain from his face. I told your mother the truth, she said quietly. The drifter looked up. What truth? Maggie swallowed, then spoke the words that changed everything. I saw her name more than once. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier, because if those records were real, then somebody inside that network had kept moving his sister's identity for 15 years. And people did not spend 15 years hiding a dead girl. They spent 15 years hiding a secret.
Do you think his sister is still alive? And what will become of her after all these years? Please let me know.
They returned to Dry Creek Ranch after dark. No words were spoken for most of the ride. The drifter rode ahead. Maggie followed behind. Both carried ghosts. Only different kinds. Lantern light glowed from the farmhouse windows when they arrived. The old widow stepped onto the porch before they reached the gate. For a moment, her eyes found Maggie. Then relief washed over her face. No questions. No speeches. She simply opened the door. Sometimes kindness looked exactly like that. Inside, coffee simmered on the stove. The smell filled the room. The drifter spread the stolen ledger pages across the kitchen table. Maggie sat opposite him. For hours, a horse screamed outside. Then came gunfire. The first bullet shattered a window. Everyone dropped. The drifter grabbed Maggie and pulled her behind the stove. 3 riders were firing from the darkness. Not trying to rob them, trying to silence them. The attack lasted less than a minute. Then the riders vanished into the night, leaving only hoofprints and one message. Someone knew about the ledger. Maybe decades. The widow quietly mended a torn shirt while listening. Every so often she pointed at a familiar family name. A ranch owner, a merchant, a deputy. People who appeared respectable during daylight. People whose names kept returning inside the ledger. That frightened Maggie more than any gunman, because monsters were easier to recognize when they looked like monsters. Near midnight, someone knocked softly at the door. 3 times. Pause. Then, once more, the widow opened it. A woman stood outside, carrying a lantern. She was middle-aged, calm-eyed, dressed in black. Her name was Clara Finch, owner of the boarding house near Dodge City. One of the few people the widow still trusted. Clara stepped inside. Without a word, she placed a folded railway timetable onto the table. "I think you need to see this." The drifter unfolded it. Several train departures had been marked in pencil. One route stood out immediately. Dodge City, southbound, New Mexico territory. Departure in 3 days. Silence settled over the room. Then Maggie pointed to one of the ledger entries. The train number matched. Exactly. A chill moved through her. Someone was preparing another transfer. Another shipment, another group of girls. The drifter leaned back in his chair. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes had changed. For the first time since arriving home, he wasn't looking backward. He was looking ahead, toward a target, toward a fight, toward answers. Then, before anyone spoke again, Maggie looked up from the ledger. Her finger rested on a note scribbled in the margin. Just 3 words, hidden between numbers, hidden so well most people would never notice. But she noticed, because she had seen the handwriting before. The blood drained from her face. The widow noticed immediately. "What is it?" Maggie swallowed, slowly, fearfully. Then she whispered, "Someone inside the network is feeding information to us." The room went still. Clara stared at her. The drifter said nothing. Outside, wind brushed against the cottonwood tree. Inside, a far more dangerous realization settled over the table. If somebody inside the organization wanted them to find these clues, then somebody else already knew they were looking. And somewhere between Dry Creek Ranch and Dodge City, a trap might already be waiting.
Have you ever spent years chasing an answer, only to fear what might happen when you finally get close? No judgment here.
The next morning began with rain. Not much, just enough to darken the dust around Dry Creek Ranch. The widow stood on the porch, watching the drops disappear into the thirsty earth. Inside, the drifter studied the ledger pages again. The same names, the same train routes, the same feeling that something larger was hiding beneath the surface. By noon, Clara led them into Dodge City. The town looked busy. Wagons rolled through Main Street. Cowboys drifted between saloons. Freight workers unloaded supplies from rail cars. Life moved forward, as if nothing terrible had ever happened there. But Maggie knew better. Some of the girls listed in that ledger had walked these same streets. Many had never walked back. Their destination sat near the edge of town, a modest brick building with faded federal markings above the entrance. The office belonged to Judge Orrin Vale, one of the few federal magistrates still willing to challenge powerful interests in the territory. The judge was older than the drifter expected. While the judge searched through his files, The widow quietly reached across the desk. She brushed a speck of dust from her son's sleeve, the same way she had when he was 10. The drifter pretended not to notice, but he didn't pull away. Some wounds on the frontier never showed on the outside. They showed in empty chairs at supper. Gray-haired, sharp-eyed, tired. The kind of tired that came from losing battles without surrendering. He studied the ledger pages for several minutes, then removed his spectacles. Finally he spoke. "You're looking at a business." Maggie frowned. "A business?" Oren nodded. "An evil one, but a business all the same." Silence filled the room. Then the judge leaned back. "Here is something worth knowing about certain frontier rail routes during that era that rarely gets said plainly." He paused. Railroads connected opportunity to the west. His finger tapped the ledger. They also connected criminals. The room grew quiet. Move a person 100 miles, and somebody might recognize her. Another tap. Move her 1,000 miles with new papers, a new name, and enough money changing hands. His voice faded, and she disappears. Nobody spoke for several moments. Outside, a train whistle echoed through town. Long, lonely, uncomfortable. The judge reached into a locked drawer. He removed a thin federal file. The drifter's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" Oren opened it. Inside rested several reports. Witness statements, shipping records, fragments of old investigations. Then he placed one yellowed page on the desk. A single name appeared near the center. The drifter froze. His sister, not listed as cargo, not listed as a victim. Something else. Something unexpected. Oren studied his reaction carefully. "I found that report 3 years ago." The drifter looked up. His pulse hammered in his ears. "What does it mean?" The judge hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. "That's what troubles me." The room suddenly felt colder. Even Maggie sensed it. Oren slowly folded his hands. "Every victim in these records disappears." He tapped the page. "Except her." The drifter stared. Unable to look away, the judge continued. "Your sister's name keeps appearing in places it shouldn't." Another pause. Another train whistle outside. Then came the words that changed everything. "I don't think someone was hiding her from the organization." The drifter's stomach tightened. Oren's voice dropped lower. "I think someone inside the organization was protecting her." The argument started before sunset. Judge Oren wanted to wait. Clara wanted more witnesses. Even Maggie wanted another day. Just one more day. The drifter refused all of them. "Every day we wait, another train leaves." The room fell silent. Nobody disagreed with that, but nobody looked convinced either. Clara folded her arms. "Or maybe every day we wait gives us a better chance." The drifter shook his head. "No." The answer came too quickly, too sharply. The old wound was talking now. Not reason, not patience. Fear. Fear of losing another sister. Fear of arriving too late again. Finally, Maggie stood. "If you're going, I'm going." The drifter didn't answer, and that was answer enough. By midnight, they were already moving toward the Gilded Lily, without backup, without enough preparation. Exactly the way the drifter had spent 15 years handling every problem. Alone. Maggie was gone. The ledger was gone. And every witness inside the Gilded Lily suddenly claimed nothing illegal had ever happened there. Judge Oren's federal request was suspended before noon. Too many important names were involved. Too many powerful men stood to lose. The town looked away. Again. That evening, the drifter returned to Dry Creek Ranch. For the first time in years, he had no plan. His mother sat beside him on the porch as darkness settled over the fields. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, she said quietly, "You've always carried everything alone." The drifter stared toward the horizon. She wasn't wrong. For 15 years, he had chased ghosts by himself. For 15 years, he had trusted nobody. And now Maggie was paying the price for that mistake. Then hoofbeats echoed from the darkness. A rider approached fast. Very fast. The horse nearly collapsed when it reached the ranch. The rider carried a message. A single folded note. Nothing more. The drifter opened it. His eyes narrowed. His face hardened. 3 words had been written across the page. 3 words that turned defeat into something far worse. "We know her." Beneath the message was another line. A line that made the blood leave his face. A line about the sister he had searched for 15 years. A line only someone inside the network could have written. "She is still alive." The note changed everything. Not because the drifter trusted it, He didn't. A man survived 15 years on the frontier by learning that paper could lie as easily as people. But somebody inside the network wanted him to know one thing. His sister mattered. She mattered enough for powerful men to keep using her name. And powerful men only protected two kinds of people: assets or threats. The following morning, Judge Orrin arrived at Dry Creek Ranch carrying unexpected news. Maggie had escaped, not rescued. Escaped. She had slipped away during a transfer between safe houses south of Dodge City. And she wasn't alone. 2 young women had escaped with her. That fact mattered, because witnesses could be silenced. 3 witnesses were much harder. By afternoon, Clara had gathered more. Former workers, rail laborers, a bookkeeper whose conscience had finally become heavier than his fear. For years, everyone had whispered. Now people were beginning to talk. The drifter listened as plans formed around him. Normally he would have left. Normally he would have ridden out alone and settled matters with a revolver. That was his flaw, always had been. But this fight was bigger than one gun, bigger than one man. His mother seemed to understand before he did. While handing him a cup of coffee on the porch, she said quietly, "The West has enough lonely graves." The drifter stared across the fields, then nodded. For once, he stayed. By noon the next day, Main Street was crowded. Word had spread through Dodge City. Judge Orrin had called a public hearing under federal authority. People filled the square. Shopkeepers, cowboys, rail workers, vidos, men who claimed not to care but came anyway. At the center stood the owner of the Gilded Lily. Smooth suit, expensive watch, confident smile. The kind of man who believed money could outlive truth. Then Maggie arrived. The crowd parted as she walked forward, bruised, exhausted, unbroken. Silence followed her. One by one, witnesses stepped forward. Stories emerged, names emerged, payments emerged. Then came the moment that changed the crowd. The missing ledger appeared. Not a copy, the original. A nervous former accountant had hidden it beneath a church floorboard months earlier. Every bribe, every shipment, every signature, written in black ink for everyone to see. The saloon owner's smile disappeared. For the first time, fear reached his eyes. Then Maggie stepped forward. The square fell silent. She looked directly at the men who had hunted her, the men who had sold women like property, the men who expected her to stay afraid. Her voice carried across Main Street. Clear, steady. "I am not going back." Then Maggie opened the ledger herself, one page at a time, one name at a time, one stolen life at a time. The crowd stopped looking at numbers. They started seeing daughters, sisters, mothers. And suddenly the town could no longer pretend it didn't know. No shouting followed, no grand speech. She simply stood her ground. And somehow, that was stronger. Then Judge Orrin revealed the final piece. A collection of hidden notes written years earlier by the drifter's sister. Not records of surrender, records of resistance. For years, she had secretly documented names, routes, and crimes from inside the organization, helping victims escape whenever she could. The crowd stared in stunned silence. The missing girl from Fort Hays Road had not simply survived. She had fought back. And suddenly, everyone wanted the answer to the same question. If she had built this secret record, where was she now? The truth arrived quietly, not with gunfire, not with revenge, just a letter. 3 days after the hearing in Dodge City, Judge Orrin rode out to Dry Creek Ranch, carrying a weathered envelope wrapped in oilcloth. The drifter knew what it was before the judge spoke. Some things a person simply feels. The letter had been found inside an abandoned rail office near Raton Pass in New Mexico territory, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, forgotten by everyone except time. The handwriting belonged to his sister. There was no doubt. The widow recognized it immediately. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the pages. For a long time, nobody spoke. The only sound was wind moving through the cottonwood branches. The letter told a story nobody had known. Years ago, after being taken from Fort Hays Road, the young girl had survived. She had endured things no child should endure, but she never stopped fighting. When opportunities came, she helped other girls escape. When records crossed her desk, she copied names. When routes changed, she documented them. The hidden notes that exposed the organization had begun with her, page after page, year after year, until eventually the network discovered what she was doing. The final pages were brief. She knew they were coming. She knew she might not survive, but she also knew the records had already been hidden. The truth was already moving beyond their reach. At the very end came one final sentence, a sentence written for her family. If you ever find this, don't spend your life looking for me. Spend it protecting someone who still has time left. The widow lowered the letter. Tears rolled silently down her face. The drifter looked toward the prairie, toward the horizon he had chased for 15 years. For the first time, the search was over. His sister was gone. She had been gone for many years, but she had not vanished. She had mattered. More than that, she had made a difference. In the weeks that followed, arrests spread across Kansas and into New Mexico territory. Rail officials were investigated. Corrupt deputies lost their badges. The owner of the Gilded Lily faced federal charges. The ledger had become impossible to bury. That was the second layer of justice. Not one villain. An entire system finally dragged into daylight. Maggie stayed at Dry Creek Ranch for a while, not because she had nowhere to go, because now she had a choice. One evening, while helping repair a fence, she smiled and said, "I choose my own life." The drifter nodded. Nothing more needed to be said. Summer slowly faded toward autumn. The old cottonwood tree still stood in the yard, the same tree where his mother had nearly died. Yet the rope was gone now. In its place hung a lantern. Every night its light stretched across the ranch. A quiet reminder. A different ending. Sometimes I think about that old cottonwood tree more than I probably should. At the beginning of this story, it held a frightened widow above the dust while cruel men tried to break her spirit. Now it watches over a family supper table beneath its branches. The sound of laughter, the creak of rocking chairs, and the steady rhythm of water flowing from the new hand pump nearby.
Out on the frontier, justice rarely arrives all at once. Sometimes it comes as truth, sometimes as courage, sometimes as a young woman choosing her future, and sometimes it sounds like water finally reaching dry ground. Out here, justice didn't always come fast. Sometimes it arrived years too late. Sometimes it arrived in a letter, or a witness, or the courage to finally speak. But en rare occasion, it arrived with the sound of water on dry ground, and a family that refused to stay broken.